our next guest, Tony Tavares, and Director Tavares from Caltrans. He's here, I presume. Director
is
yes,
here.
good,
Tony, you're on
good
mute.
morning,
There we go.
Bobby. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm glad that you could join us. Let me introduce you to our audience. Tony Tavares was appointed the 34th Director of the Department of Transportation, Caltrans, by Governor Gavin Newsom and sworn in June 2022. Director Tavares manages nearly $20 billion budget and more than 22,000 employees who oversee 50,000 lane miles of highway, maintain approximately 20,000 bridges, provide permitting of more than 400 public use airports, fund 3 of the Amtrak's busiest intercity rail services, and provide transit support to more than 200 local and regional transit agencies. Director Tavares' transportation vision for California addresses critical climate issues and advances a safe, equitable, accessible, sustainable, and multimodal transportation system that builds on strong partnership and robust stakeholder engagement. He fosters people-first culture built on the principle of safety, equity, climate action, and economic prosperity, furthering a California for all. He encourages innovation and intelligent risk-taking, as informative innovation will be needed to achieve zero traffic-related deaths, a great objective, and a serious injury by 2050, and reduces greenhouse gases by 40% by 2030. Director Tavares also served as Caltrans Bay Area Director, District 4, where he was instrumental in implementing California's landmark Senate Bill 1, SB 1, the Road Repair and Accountability Act. There he directed 7,000 multidisciplinary professional employees with an annual allocation of $2.2 billion. Director Tavares is a graduate of University of California, Davis, with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. He's a professional engineer and a certified project management professional, PMP. So without further ado, I give you Director Tavares. Director, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Bobby. I appreciate that very kind introduction, and good morning to everyone. I'm so grateful and honored to be here joining you at the Statewide Disability Awareness Council Conference, and a very special thank you to the Council for staging this very important event. I know we have a lot of leadership from various organizations in California. I would like to just acknowledge a few of those people. Our esteemed Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, Joe Xavier, Director of the California Department of Rehabilitation, Suzanne Ambrose, the Executive Director for the State Personnel Board, Corey Lemmings, the Regional Business Specialist for the California Department of Rehabilitation, and Eli Medrano, the EEO Program Manager, Office of Civil Rights at the California Human Resource Department. So as mentioned, Caltrans is strongly committed to providing a very safe and equitable, accessible, and reliable transportation network that serves all people in California. Our core priority of the department is improving modality on our transportation network, and the landmark ADA law guarantees equal opportunity for individuals with disabilities in public accommodations. Critically, this includes transportation infrastructure, and Caltrans utilizes Title II of the ADA and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as our guideposts in maintaining roadways and pedestrian infrastructure that facilitates the movement of people regardless of their physical abilities. With more than 56,000 curb ramps and more than 4,000 miles of sidewalk, Caltrans is a central player along with our cities and counties throughout the state in providing facilities that are accessible and usable for people with disabilities. Caltrans' ADA transition plan contributes to this effort by identifying barriers and providing prioritization criteria to assist staff with project scoping and programming. And Bobby mentioned we are a people-centric organization, and people are our top focus, our reason for the work we do every day. And Caltrans is committed to accessibility in both transportation and its work environments. We're utilizing leadership, collaboration, strategic partnerships to develop an integrated transportation system that provides reliability and accessibility for all travelers. Our Equal Employment Opportunity Program has created trainings on disability awareness with supplemental guides and resources. And our new disability awareness training will be released later in March of this year as a mandatory requirement for all Caltrans staff to take. Our EEO office has also redesigned the Disability Advisory Committee for Caltrans for the purposes of bolstering their efforts with equity as a leading objective and in alignment with a post-pandemic hybrid telework environment. Our Disability Advisory Committee is vital in identifying issues relevant to applicants and workers with disabilities. The committee is also designed as the channel through which solutions and resolutions are recommended, and the committee can help monitor outcomes and suggest adjustments to the policy implementation. Our committee also provides leadership and guidance for the development of equal access and non-discriminatory employment opportunities. And this committee will bolster equal representation from all of our 12 districts throughout the state, equal access to shared resources from all of the districts, a standardized process and procedure for all districts, and a consolidated approach to reporting requirements. Caltrans is also in the process of reworking our Disability Advisory Committee to give employees more chances to collaborate. We're using virtual platforms, in-person meetings, and other opportunities such as fundraising to further the committee's initiatives. And Caltrans is encouraging all of our workforce to participate in this committee with the purpose of creating more equity and inclusion through a volunteer process, and also increasing knowledge, understanding, and appreciation for the needs of people with disabilities. Our EEO office is participating and partnering with all of our 12 districts to pilot a diverse interview panel. This would be in alignment with our equity best practices. And this diverse interview panel is an innovative approach to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion during the hiring process. Ensuring hiring committees are compliant in implicit bias training to combat discrimination and make more opportunities for everyone, including those with disabilities. Our managers and supervisors are also being trained on implicit bias as it relates to the interview process. They are being given the tools to recognize their own implicit biases, as well as learn how to overcome them to create a more inclusive workforce. The purpose of requiring implicit bias training for the diverse interview panel is to recognize and identify our own personal biases that may surface when sitting on interview panels, demonstrate ability to recognize biases within ourselves and others, and also develop confidence to identify and redirect conversations during the hiring process and at work to support conflict resolution. More than 3,500 managers and supervisors have already completed this ongoing implicit bias training, and it is a mandatory training for all of our managers and supervisors. As mentioned, again, people first, I can't say that enough. It all comes back to our emphasis on being a people first, a people-centric organization. Our actions are much more stronger than the words. We must fully recognize that any organization's true culture is revealed not by what they say they do, but what they actually do and how the work is accomplished. It's always our past, our present, and future that form our why. Why do we exist? Our reasons for what we do every day. And we learn from and we build upon the past while navigating new paths that best serve every person. So at the end, everything we do must keep that end user in mind. This includes our own employees, as well as the people of California who use our transportation network, and those people who come to California and visit our great state. So again, it's our actions that best show what we stand for. We are a people-first organization, and people are the most important component of the work that we do on a daily basis. So once again, Caltrans remains vigilant in providing equal and fair opportunities for everyone. Our Caltrans equity statement, supported by the ADA transition plan, is the first of its kind in our department's history. And it's responsible for launching our 4 Ps of equity, which are people, programs and projects, partnerships, and the planet. These serve as our points of direction to improve the lives of all Californians. And through these 4 Ps, we continue to display incredible progress in our quest for equity at Caltrans. And I'll say equity is not just a fabric at our organization, and it certainly isn't a catchphrase. It is part of a long-term commitment of ensuring that equity remains at the forefront for everything that we do. I want to just share a statement that a friend of mine and also a leader in California mentioned, and I'm going to plagiarize her here. She said, diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action. And when you incorporate all 3 together, you create belonging. And that's what we're trying to do at Caltrans with a people-focused organization, is create belonging, ensuring not only our employees feel like they're part of something bigger than just themselves, but our entire state, everyone who uses a transportation system also feels that as well. So as the Caltrans director, I am extremely proud to lead us in fulfilling our goal to make equity a bedrock of our culture, our future, and ultimately to deliver an equitable, accessible, safe, reliable transportation network to all Californians. Once again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to all of you this morning and be part of this critical discussion today. Thank you very much, Bobby.
Thank you. Do you have a couple of minutes for a Q&A?
I certainly do. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate it. It was a great presentation. Happy to hear that that you have such great values in Caltrans about equity, people first, diversity, and inclusion. I particularly like the word that you plagiarized. Equity is a choice and inclusion is an action. They're very difficult to achieve within a state government organization. So I'm glad to hear Caltrans is doing that with 20,000+ employees. One of the questions that came up in the chat is, Director Tavares, thank you for the efforts Caltrans is making to hire individuals with disabilities. What supports do you think Caltrans need from SDAC, that's us, and the Department of Rehab in meeting parity rates? Now, the parity rate, just so you probably know this, that every state entities must have a certain percentage of employees with disabilities, and that number should be at 16.6. Lori Gillihan from State Personnel Board, the previous speaker, spoke of that earlier, and many of the departments are struggling to meet that. And so the question here that Corey Lemmings is asking is that what can SDAC and Department of Rehab do to meet your parity rate? And perhaps you don't need to be met. You're already at that 16.6%. Do you know what your department's parity rate is?
So I don't have that exact number in front of me, unfortunately, but I will say that although 16.6 is the goal, I think we can always do better than that.
Sure.
And I would achieve to surpass that that goal. That should be a minimum. We should always go higher than that whenever possible. And I think the SDAC could help us at Caltrans, evaluating our policies, evaluating our procedures in hiring, but not just hiring, how in promoting as well. It's not just hiring, but I want to see a very diverse, inclusive executive team. And so how do we work together to find those opportunities on how we hire and promote people with disabilities to these higher levels within the organization to help drive, to help guide us so that we continue to surpass that 16.6.
Absolutely. And we'll be happy to work with your HR shop. Just connect us to the HR chief. And who is the chief of your HR?
Her name is Ashley McGukin.
Okay. I'll follow up with you on that. Thank you so much. You know, and Caltrans wouldn't be the only entity that is not meeting that parity rate. There are many others, and Lori talked about that earlier. But you're right, our goal should be to not only meet that, but to exceed it. The other thing that was interesting to me, I'm glad to hear that you're doing so much for your DAG, Disability Advisory Committee. And one of the things that stood out is their fundraising efforts. Tell us a little bit about that so all the other DACs can learn from that, your experience.
Yeah, so there's always opportunities. We're having fundraising opportunities in our headquarters location here in Sacramento, but throughout all of our 12 districts to not only raise funds, but to raise awareness. And I think that's it's an opportunity for education to our rank and file staff and others. Not only do we have certain trainings, as I mentioned, that we are developing and we're going to roll out some additional ones this year, but also just the ability to interact and have that education and as I mentioned earlier, the appreciation for people with different types of abilities, right? And it's so important that we continue to showcase these individuals as leaders in our department, as leaders in our communities, as leaders in the state. And so these fundraising opportunities provide so many different opportunities beyond just raising funds to help, but raise awareness as well.
Great. And one of the other things that Corey mentioned earlier, who's from DOOR, is that he's willing to provide and work with entities and do informational interviews where he can speak to a group about person with disabilities, of how to go about getting state job and answer any questions to make the access to state employment that much easier or equitable per se. Equitable is the right word. So people feel inclusive within the effort. And to that extent, when you do any hiring events, do you have any particular focus towards giving that message or conveying that message to a person with disabilities that's looking for a job?
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever we have hiring events or even doing outreach at universities and other locations throughout the state and outside the state, where I'm always challenging my team, how do we remove those barriers? Because it can be very daunting to obtain a job with the state. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of hoops people have to jump through. How do we remove those barriers and help people? And that's people across all areas, people with disabilities, but also people from minority groups who have not had the same level of opportunities in the past. And so my goal is to lift everybody up and continue to remove those barriers, have our own staff to be mentors and catalysts with different groups to help them through the process, help shepherd them through each stage of the process, and to keep that communication open and that education and sharing of knowledge with everyone.
Right. Another question that's in the chat, we are regularly shown that the road work is one of the most dangerous jobs in America. Does Caltrans have a resource for making your current staff comfortable disclosing an acquired or pre-existing disability? Because I understand that, you probably have some standards, health standards that not all positions can fulfill. But the jobs that do not require those physical standards, like I'm thinking about the safety classification, peace officer, so on. Let's say an engineer that's sitting behind a desk like yourself, and doing calculations and so on, could they then follow a resource guide and say, well, I have this disability, I need this accommodation, and I don't need to be out there. It doesn't interfere with my, other things. I just need to do this to perform the essential functions of my job in the office or a desk situation. Do you have any such resource that provide that kind of guidance?
We do have that resource here in Caltrans in our HR department that assists with that. We do provide those opportunities. We're always very willing to help people with their accommodations. We understand that someone who may have an engineering degree or someone who has a construction background, perhaps maybe they can't physically be out on the highway, but like you said, they could be in the resident engineer office assisting with the calculations, assisting with the plan reading, assisting with continuing to move that project along. And so we're always looking for those ways. How can we help people fit them in the right position, which they maintain their safety, because obviously we want to ensure that for all of our employees, but they're also contributing and being a valuable member of our team.
Great. Would you be willing to share that information with us? You can send it to me and I'll share that with the rest so they can also implement good practices. We're all about learning and empowering our members here about knowledge and good practices that others have followed.
Absolutely. Would love to share that with you, Bobby.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for Director Tavares? And I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly after 20 minutes.
Of course, it's you're very close. That's close enough.
All right. Then let's see. Aren't we talking about people with disabilities and hiring? And it seems like things like race, gender, etc. keep popping up. I'm confused as to the purview of DAC. Well, I can answer that question. It's about being inclusive. Race, gender, etc., all being part of equitable. Person with disabilities fall in the same category, right? We all want to be included and find an equitable platform and feel like we belong, right? That's inclusion. So yes, DAC is part of that. And we should embrace the diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of the generic fabric for being DAC, because that's what we are all about. But anyway, Director, I stepped in and answered the question. You feel free to add in.
You said it beautifully, Bobby. That I don't know if I could do any better than that, other than to say, look, we're all unique human beings. And we all, just like you said, we want to feel included. We want to belong. We want to be treated just like anyone else. And that's what DAC is all about in my mind. And equity is across that whole fabric of who we are as human beings. Well,
thank you very much for supporting my rendition. I appreciate the added help that you added. You're a lot more eloquent than my position was. So thank you, Director. Do we have any other questions for the Director? Because I realize I only committed to asking him, and he was very generous of allowing us 20 minutes. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to say goodbye to the Director with gratitude. And, you've been very kind in sharing the information. We look forward to, we will follow up with your HR and relationship to what you offered us to do, which is evaluate the policy in promoting and hiring and so on, simply as an advisory capacity, and also take away what you're doing right and share that with the rest of the group.
Appreciate that. I appreciate the time, Bobby. I appreciate everyone allowing me to be here and speak to you, but for your time to be here as well. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. You're welcome to stay on after this or leave. I know you're very busy, and nevertheless, come back and see us soon.
I will. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.